Hey, what's going on, guys? OJ back here with another video, and today we're going to be talking about all of the fights to make following UFC 326, Charles Oliveira versus Max Holloway. I'm not going to talk about every single fighter that fought on this card because, let's be honest, most of us do not give a shit about most of the fighters that fought on this card. But regardless, though, these are, I feel like, are important fights to make that actually mean something divisionally. So here are all the fights to make following UFC 326. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Okay, so let's get the obvious one out of the way for us. All right, Charles Oliveira. He beat Max Holloway very dominantly. Hell, I would say even more dominantly than what Ilia Topuria did to Max Holloway. But does this really warrant Charles Oliveira a title shot? I don't think so. He did get slimed out by Ilia Topuria last year, so I feel like he's going to have to fight one more person, and the only person left in the lightweight division right now is Arman Tsarukyan. Now, Arman Tsarukyan, on the other hand, I don't know if he's going to take this fight, but if he doesn't, he's going to be iced out for the entire year because Dana White will not give Arman Tsarukyan the next title shot, even though it is kind of warranted at this point. But still, though, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan is the next fight to make after Ilia Topuria slimes out Justin Gaethje at the White House card, and the winner of this fight can fight Ilia Topuria in his next fight. But either way, though, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, this is a rematch. Hell, I thought that Charles Oliveira beat Arman Tsarukyan in their first fight, and in the hindsight, though, Arman Tsarukyan did look very good. Right, he did look very good. So I want to see this rematch run back 5 rounds. Winner gets a title shot. Put this on like either a co-main event for a pay-per-view. Maybe you can put this as a pay-per-view headliner for the BMF belt, but I don't really give a shit about the BMF belt at this point. Or you put this on a Fight Night main event. But either way, though, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan needs to happen for the next title shot against Ilia Topuria, and the winner of that fight can then get slimed out by Ilia Topuria in the process. Now, moving on to Max Holloway, there are a couple of fights that we can do, but I think Max Holloway versus Benoit Denis is the next step. Holloway is going to have to fight down, but I don't think he's going to need to fight crazy down to the point where he's fighting some bum like Paddy Pimblett. Because let's face it, Paddy Pimblett, it's even a question as to whether or not he belongs in the top 10 at this point. Whereas Benoit Denis, I feel like he's proven to be a top 10, top 5-ish contender. So I feel like this is the next step for Benoit Denis. It's going to be a banger of a scrap. It's very similar to Charles Oliveira's game plan, where Benoit Denis is going to take a heavy grappling approach. But unlike Charles Oliveira, Benoit Denis is extremely slow. He is really slow on the feet. So I think Max Holloway versus Benoit Denis, it's a cool little stylistic matchup. Is Holloway's ground game just absolute trash? Or is it just that Charles Oliveira is just an absolute phenom? All right, I think it's the latter. But we got to prove that. So I think the best way to prove that is for Max Holloway to fight another primary grappler who's not as good as Charles Oliveira, don't get me wrong, but still, though, like, he can pose a lot of problems to Max Holloway. And but at the same time, though, Max Holloway can light Benoit Denis up on the feet and knock him out in the second round. So yeah, Max Holloway versus Benoit Denis, I believe, is the next fight to make for Max Holloway. Now moving on to Caio Borralho, who beat Reiner De Ridder by decision. Not exactly the most entertaining and thrilling fight of all time, but he did win pretty convincingly. So I think his next step is Anthony Hernandez, someone who was looked at as a top 5 contender. He recently lost his title elimination bout to Sean Strickland, so I'm not sure whether or not Anthony Hernandez is top 5 caliber at the moment, but still though, Caio Borralho versus Fluffy Hernandez seems like the next fight to make. If Caio Borralho can win this, or like if either one of these guys can win this to be specific, they're back on track for a top 5 opponent, maybe 1 or 2 more fights, and they can possibly look for a title shot. But either way, though, Caio Borralho versus Fluffy Hernandez, they fought on pretty similar schedules. Fluffy Hernandez, although coming off a TKO loss, I don't think he suffered like crazy amounts of damage against Sean Strickland. So I think Caio Borralho versus Fluffy Hernandez can be booked sometime later this year. I'm going to say around like I'm going to say around September, October-ish. Yeah, Caio Borralho versus Fluffy Hernandez, and the winner can get a top 5 opponent for a title elimination bout. Moving on to Reiner De Ridder, who unfortunately lost to Caio Borralho and is now on a 2-fight skid. He is going to have to fight down the rankings, and I'm going to have Reiner De Ridder fight the winner between Christian Leroy Duncan and Roman Dolidze. That's going to happen like 2 weeks from now. Now, the only reason why I have Christian Leroy Duncan's, profile here is because I think CLD is going to whoop up Roman Dolidze. Roman Dolidze is awful. Alright, so Reiner De Ridder versus Christian Leroy Duncan, especially because they're on very similar schedules. I feel like this is a good fight to make. Let's see whether or not Reiner De Ridder really belongs in the top 10. And I feel like if CLD can just whoop up Roman Dolidze, a good step up in competition for him is RDR. I think this is a very interesting stylistic matchup. You know, on the off chance that Roman Dolidze screws this plan up, then I don't know what to say, but either way though, RDR versus CLD after he whoops up Roman Dolidze, I think that's the next fight to make, considering the rankings as well as their schedule. Moving on to Raul Rosas Jr. He beat Rob Font. Was it an impressive performance? Not really, but he did win, and he is now going to be a ranked bantamweight come this Tuesday. So I think the next step for Raul Rosas Jr., unfortunately, it's going to be Chito Vera. Like, do I want to see Raul Rosas Jr. get fraud checked by, like, Vinicius Oliveira or anybody like that? Yes, but I don't think the UFC is going to give him any sort of dangerous matchup, and they're going to give him someone who has a lot of name value, but is pretty much washed at this point, and that is Marlon Chito Vera. Marlon Chito Vera just fought last week, and he lost the 29-28 decision to David Martinez. I feel like this could be booked on some random Mexican card, probably on September. Raul Rosas Jr. versus Marlon Vera. And I don't think I could pick Marlon Vera to win a fight in the year of 2026. So, yeah, Raul Rosas Jr., I feel like this is a perfect opponent for him. Or at least that's what the UFC is thinking. And Raul Rosas Jr. will probably be fighting Marlon Chito Vera coming this September. You know, even though Drew Dober has a lot of losses in his career, you know, after his performance against Michael Johnson, I feel like he's proven that he's the big bear, a big dog, and also the lion. You know, he's the predator and the prey that is hiding. Oh my, do not let Drew Dober get close. And if you run away from him, he will slime your ass out. And unfortunately for Jalen Turner, Drew Dober is feeling a certain type of motivation right now. And I would not be shocked if Drew Dober slimes out Jalen Turner after getting pieced up, because that's typically how Drew Dober wins. Alright? I think Drew Dober versus Jalen Turner is the perfect fight to make. I know Drew Dober did take a little bit of damage, but he's pretty active. He's relatively active. So hopefully Drew Dober can make a relatively quick turnaround. I would say book this sometime around August or September, alright, for the science. Alright, I feel like we all need to see this matchup for the science itself. And once Drew Dober slimes out Jalen Turner, then he can hang up his Infinity Gauntlet and he can rest in peace as one of the greatest meme fighters of all time. President Obama dropped democracy on Brunno Ferreira's head, and I feel like that warrants Gregory Rodrigues a huge step up in competition. And unfortunately, alright, I don't want to see this matchup, but I feel like this is going to be the matchup that's being made. Gregory Rodrigues will fight Robert Whittaker. Alright, Robert Whittaker does not have an opponent. He hasn't fought in a while. He's coming off a couple of losses to RDR, Hamza Chimaev, Dricus Duplessis. It's kind of tough for Robert Whittaker at this point. So, I want to see Robert Whittaker fight an up-and-comer that is very dangerous in Gregory Rodrigues. This will also kind of prove whether or not Robert Whittaker can actually move up to light heavyweight. I know Whittaker has been talking about that for a very long time, but I don't think he's big enough. I really don't. So hopefully Whittaker, you know, if he wants to move up to light heavyweight, you know, hopefully he can prove it to us by beating a very big middleweight that's borderline light heavyweight. And if Robert Whittaker can win this fight, alright, that's great. You can move on to light heavyweight, but I don't know. I feel like this is the matchup that the UFC is going to make. Again, it's been a while since Robert Whittaker's really fought. Gregory Rodrigues versus Robert Whittaker is the fight to make sometime in the summer of 2026. Now, Brunno Ferreira unfortunately got democracy dropped on his head by RoboCop. So he is going to have to fight down in the rankings. And I feel like one guy who deserves a shot up into the top 15 is Ikram Aliskerov. Ikram Aliskerov, yes, he got chinned by Robert Whittaker, but that was on a week's notice. And outside of that, Aliskerov has been winning his fights. He has looked pretty iffy against Junyoung Park, but still though, I think Ikram Aliskerov is a very solid fighter, and I think Brunno Ferreira versus Ikram Aliskerov is a very interesting stylistic matchup, considering how neither guy really has the best gas tank. But then again though, Aliskerov does push a more grappling approach than Brunno Ferreira does. So I'm very interested to see whether or not this can work against Brunno Ferreira, but I wouldn't be shocked if Ferreira just slimes out Aliskerov, because Aliskerov is very chinny to say the least. So yeah, Brunno Ferreira versus Ikram Aliskerov. I think this is a very good fight you can book sometime later in 2026. Maybe Ferreira needs some time off after that nasty knockout that he suffered from. But I think Aliskerov, this is how he's going to get into the top 15. It also helps that even though he fought like a couple months back, he's not very active, to say the least. So yeah, Brunno Ferreira versus Ikram Aliskerov sometime late in 2026. I'd say around October-ish. And I think the winner of this can go shoot themselves back up into the rankings of the middleweight division. Up next, we got Ilia Topuro. He did come off a second round submission win over Ricky Turcios. At the end of the day, though, it is Ricky Turcios, so I don't know how much credit I can give to Alberto Montes in this situation. But either way, though, Alberto Montes, I feel like he needs to fight someone who's actually UFC caliber. And I think someone who's UFC caliber, although not the best at this point, is Sodiq Yusuff. Sodiq Yusuff, it's been a while since he's fought. Alberto Montes suffered relatively little damage, so if Alberto Montes wants to make a quick turnaround, I think an easy next opponent to see where he's at. I think the perfect opponent for him is Sodiq Yusuff, who is pretty tough. Alright, he is pretty tough, but he has been chinny. He has been very inactive as well as of recently, and he does seem to slow down as of recently now as well. So yeah, Alberto Montes versus Sodiq Yusuff. Let's see whether or not Alberto Montes is really all that, because at the end of the day, you just slimed out Ricky Turcios, which I feel like a lot of people have done. So yeah, Alberto Montes versus Sodiq Yusuff, and let's see whether or not Ilia Topuria can make a second run in the featherweight division. Last but not least, we got Sumudaerji, who is coming off 3 wins in a row after beating Jesus Aguilar. Probably pretty comfortable decision. I really do believe that Sumudaerji has the skills to be a top 15 flyweight again. So let's test that by having him fight Tagir Ulanbekov. Tagir Ulanbekov just got brutally beaten down by Kyoji Horiguchi in November. So I think timeline-wise, this does kind of match up. And plus, Tagir is going to have to fight down in the rankings against the unranked contender that has been gone a little bit of a streak. And Sumudaerji, although not against the best of names, he has looked very good. Alright, and he's on a 3-fight win streak right now. So let's see Sumudaerji versus Tagir Ulanbekov sometime later this year. I wouldn't mind if this is on like the China card. That's usually in like October. Actually, no, like August to October-ish. I don't know exactly when the next China card is. But either way, though, I think that's a perfect fight for Sumudaerji to try and reintroduce himself into the flyweight rankings. So I think Sumudaerji versus Tagir Ulanbekov is the next fight to make. And then the winner of this can probably go back into the rankings and try to fight a top 12 to 10 opponent in the flyweight division. Alright, that's gonna be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can monetize this channel. But otherwise, leave any comments down below what you guys think about these matchups. What matchups would you guys make? Leave that all down in the comments down below. But other than that, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow talking about the White House card. Peace.